These are your latest news updates. A major security incident unfolded at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property. Secret Service agents shot and killed an armed man who reportedly breached a secured perimeter before being confronted. Authorities say the individual ignored repeated commands, and investigations are now underway to determine motive and whether the incident is tied to any broader threats. The White House has praised the agent's response while critics are calling for a full review of security procedures. Ghislaine Maxwell is now fighting the potential release of nearly 90,000 pages of documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Legal teams argue that the massive disclosure could violate privacy rights and ongoing legal protections, while transparency advocates say the public deserves clarity about powerful figures linked to the case. The court's next move could significantly reshape what information becomes public in the months ahead. Mexican officials confirmed that cartel leader Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes, one of the world's most wanted drug traffickers, was killed during a military operation. The development has sparked both relief and concern, as authorities brace for potential retaliation from organized crime groups. Security forces remain deployed in several regions as tensions rise. Winter storm Hernando slammed into the northeast, bringing heavy snow, dangerous winds, and widespread travel disruptions. Flights were canceled across multiple states as officials warned residents to stay off icy roads. Emergency crews remain on high alert as forecasters warn that additional snowfall could worsen already dangerous conditions. In Washington, new polling suggests President Trump's approval rating among independent voters has dropped to a new low ahead of the upcoming State of the Union address. Analysts say economic concerns, foreign policy debates, and ongoing legal battles are shaping voter sentiment, while supporters argue the administration's policies will gain momentum once major initiatives move forward. As these stories continue to develop, from legal battles surrounding the Epstein investigation to security concerns, severe weather, and shifting political dynamics, we'll continue bringing you clear and factual updates as they happen. A federal judge has permanently blocked the public release of special counsel Jack Smith's report connected to the Trump documents investigation, a major legal development in one of the most closely watched cases in U.S. politics. The investigation centered on the handling of classified government documents that remained at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence after his presidency, along with questions about record-keeping, compliance with federal subpoenas, and whether any actions may have obstructed efforts to retrieve sensitive materials. Supporters of the ruling say keeping the report sealed protects legal procedures and prevents politically charged disclosures, while critics argue that transparency is essential so the public can understand the findings of the special counsel's work. Legal analysts note that special counsel reports often summarize investigative conclusions and evidence, meaning the court's decision could limit what details become public in the near future. The Justice Department has not ruled out additional legal steps, and the decision is already fueling debate across Washington about executive authority, national security, and the balance between privacy and public interest as the broader political landscape continues to evolve. These are your latest news updates. Developing first here in the United States, millions of Americans are beginning recovery efforts after a powerful winter storm swept across the Northeast, leaving heavy snow, travel disruptions, and widespread power outages in its wake. Officials say some regions saw several feet of snowfall, forcing school closures and grounding hundreds of flights as emergency crews worked around the clock to restore electricity and clear major roadways. Meteorologists warn that icy conditions could linger for days, creating continued hazards for commuters even as the storm system moves out. Turning to Washington, political attention is focused on President Donald Trump, who is set to deliver his latest State of the Union address tonight. The speech is expected to center on immigration enforcement, economic growth, and foreign policy priorities, particularly following a major Supreme Court decision that struck down parts of the administration's global tariff strategy. Analysts say the address could be a defining moment for Trump as he attempts to reassure voters and global allies that his economic agenda remains on track. Meanwhile, global markets are reacting to a revised 10% tariff policy that has already taken effect, raising concerns among European and Asian trade partners. Economists warn that retaliatory measures could impact supply chains, consumer prices, and international negotiations, while supporters argue the policy is designed to strengthen American manufacturing and protect domestic industries. Internationally, Today marks 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a milestone that has prompted renewed diplomatic discussions across Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging Western allies to maintain military and economic support as drone strikes and infrastructure attacks continue. European leaders are holding security meetings to discuss long-term defense cooperation, with analysts warning that the conflict could remain a prolonged standoff without a major breakthrough in negotiations. Foreign policy tensions are also expected to feature prominently in tonight's State of the Union, as the administration faces growing pressure over its approach toward Iran and broader Middle East security issues. Military analysts say recent diplomatic signals suggest a mix of negotiation and deterrence, reflecting the complex balancing act facing global leaders as conflicts stretch across multiple regions. From historic winter storms here at home to major political decisions in Washington and escalating geopolitical challenges overseas, today's headlines reflect a world navigating uncertainty on multiple fronts. As leaders prepare for pivotal speeches and international conflicts continue shaping global security, the coming days could prove critical in defining both domestic policy and foreign relations. We'll continue bringing you clear, fact-focused updates as these stories develop. These are your latest news updates. In Washington, where President Donald Trump delivered what is now being called the longest State of the Union address in modern U.S. history, lasting more than 100 minutes, the speech focused heavily on tariffs, foreign policy, immigration enforcement, and economic nationalism, with the administration arguing that aggressive trade measures are necessary to protect American industries. Supporters praised the address as a strong defense of domestic manufacturing, while critics said the tone deepened partisan divides. The night was marked by visible protests and walkouts inside the chamber, including an incident involving Representative Al Green that quickly went viral and sparked debate about political protest during official proceedings. Democratic Representative Abigail Spanberger delivered the official response, emphasizing economic stability, bipartisan cooperation, and concerns about long-term national security strategy. Analysts say her speech signals how Democrats may position themselves moving forward, focusing on middle-class costs and global alliances, as both parties begin shaping their messaging for the next election cycle. Meanwhile, economic debate continues to intensify after renewed tariff warnings from the White House, following a Supreme Court setback tied to global trade policies. Markets reacted cautiously as investors weighed uncertainty around potential new tariffs and international retaliation. Lawmakers are also discussing a proposal that could provide financial relief to Americans impacted by price increases linked to trade disputes, though economists remain divided on whether such measures would reduce inflation or add new fiscal pressure. Adding to economic concerns, mortgage refinance rates have climbed back above 6%, raising fresh worries about housing affordability. Financial analysts say rising borrowing costs could slow home buying activity and increase pressure on first-time buyers, while lenders prepare for potential shifts in demand if rates remain elevated into the spring season. Turning to regional security developments, attention remains focused on Mexico following reports surrounding cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. Authorities continue investigations after the reported military operation targeting him, with officials warning that the power vacuum inside cartel networks could trigger retaliation or new clashes among rival groups. U.S. officials are monitoring the situation closely due to its potential impact on cross-border security and drug enforcement efforts. Internationally, diplomatic tensions are rising as Iran pushes back against U.S. pressure ahead of upcoming nuclear negotiations in Geneva. Iranian officials accused Washington of escalating rhetoric, while Western diplomats say the talks will be critical in determining the future of nuclear restrictions and regional stability. Analysts warn that any breakdown in negotiations could reshape alliances across the Middle East and affect global energy markets. In global humanitarian news, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made a surprise visit to Jordan, highlighting refugee support programs and health initiatives in the region. Their visit drew international media attention and underscored ongoing humanitarian challenges tied to displacement and regional conflict, as global organizations continue to call for increased funding and coordinated international response. As political tensions grow at home and diplomatic negotiations unfold abroad, today's headlines reflect a world navigating economic uncertainty, security challenges, and shifting global alliances, with decisions made in Washington and beyond likely to shape the weeks ahead. These are your latest news updates. We begin in Washington, where immigration policy is back at the center of national debate. A federal judge has ruled that the Trump administration's proposed third-country deportation policy is unlawful, saying the plan raises serious legal concerns about due process and international protections. The ruling could temporarily block parts of the administration's immigration strategy while appeals move forward, and it's already fueling sharp reactions on Capitol Hill. At the same time, the administration is reportedly exploring new financial regulations that would require banks to collect citizenship information from certain customers. Supporters argue it could strengthen immigration enforcement, while critics warn it may raise privacy concerns and place additional burdens on financial institutions. The proposal remains under review, but it's already becoming one of the most talked about policy ideas of the week. Another major political development comes from inside federal law enforcement. Sources say at least 10 FBI staffers connected to investigations involving Mar-a-Lago were dismissed or reassigned, a move that has sparked questions from lawmakers about potential political pressure and oversight. Officials have not released full details, but the shakeup is adding new tension to an already divided political environment. Meanwhile, fallout from the State of the Union continues. Representative Al Green was ejected after holding a controversial protest sign during the speech, an incident that has intensified debate over political messaging, decorum, and free expression inside Congress. Democrats and Republicans alike are weighing in, highlighting just how polarized the atmosphere remains in Washington. Economic headlines are also dominating today's conversation. Rising mortgage rates, now back above 6%, are once again putting pressure on homebuyers and slowing refinancing activity. Analysts say the housing market could remain volatile as policymakers debate tariffs, trade rules, and new economic proposals following recent court challenges to global tariff authority. Donald Trump's trade strategy continues to influence markets worldwide, with investors closely watching how future legal battles may reshape international commerce. Mexico is on high alert following reports surrounding cartel leader Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. Authorities warn that shifting power dynamics within organized crime networks could trigger instability or retaliation, raising security concerns across the region and along the U.S. border. In global diplomacy, tensions remain high ahead of upcoming nuclear negotiations with Iran. Officials in Tehran have pushed back against U.S. pressure tactics, signaling that talks could be difficult as both sides prepare for high-stakes discussions in Geneva. And in humanitarian news, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made a surprise visit to Jordan, highlighting refugee health initiatives and drawing international attention to ongoing displacement crises in the Middle East. The visit underscores growing efforts by global figures to spotlight humanitarian challenges beyond traditional political channels. From major policy battles here in Washington to international security and diplomacy shaping the global landscape. As always, the stories are still developing and we'll continue tracking the updates that matter most. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in the next update. These are your latest news updates. Along the southern border in Texas, the Department of Defense confirmed that it shot down a Customs and Border Protection surveillance drone during operations near the U.S.-Mexico border. Officials described the incident as a misidentification during a military exercise. Investigations are underway to assess interagency communication between the Pentagon and Homeland Security. In New York City, where a Columbia University student who had been detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has now been released. The detention had sparked protests in Manhattan and raised renewed debate over federal immigration enforcement practices involving student visa holders. Advocacy groups across New York State are calling for clearer due process protections, while federal officials say enforcement actions are being carried out under existing immigration law. Also in New York City, Mayor Zohran Mamdani's administration is launching a formal review of the city's response to the recent winter storm that impacted the 5 boroughs. The review will examine snow removal operations in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan, as well as emergency coordination and transit delays. City officials say the goal is to improve preparedness before the next major storm system hits the Northeast. In Palm Beach County, Florida, a sheriff's deputy who was shot while responding to a domestic disturbance is now reported to be recovering in stable condition. Authorities say the incident remains under investigation, highlighting ongoing safety risks faced by law enforcement during domestic calls. Meanwhile, in Passaic, New Jersey, a significant water main break flooded portions of a residential street, disrupting traffic and temporarily cutting water service to nearby homes. Public works crews worked through the night to contain the flooding and begin infrastructure repairs. Turning to Washington, D.C., former President Bill Clinton is expected to testify before the House Oversight Committee regarding matters connected to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. His appearance follows a recent deposition given by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Chappaqua, New York. Lawmakers say the hearings aim to clarify travel records and associations connected to Epstein's network. The rare testimony of a former president before congressional investigators marks a notable political development in the nation's capital. Also on Capitol Hill, congressional Democrats are demanding approximately $1,700 in tariff refunds for American households after the Supreme Court struck down certain trade levies tied to Trump-era policies. Lawmakers argue that consumers across the country, from Michigan manufacturing communities to California ports, absorbed higher costs linked to those tariffs and deserve repayment. Opponents question how such refunds would be funded and whether they would require new legislation. Now turning overseas. In South Asia, Pakistan and Afghanistan are engaged in escalating cross-border conflict. Pakistan says military operations are continuing in areas near the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, while Afghan officials report retaliatory strikes along the border. Casualties have been reported on both sides, and international observers warn that the violence could destabilize the broader region. In South Sudan, the United Nations is warning that renewed clashes between rival factions in Juba and surrounding regions could push the country toward full-scale conflict once again. Humanitarian organizations are preparing for potential displacement if violence expands. In the Middle East, the United States has authorized some diplomatic staff to leave Tel Aviv and Jerusalem amid rising tensions between Israel and Iran. The precautionary move comes as nuclear negotiations between U.S. and Iranian officials in Geneva, Switzerland, ended without a breakthrough. U.S. officials expressed concern over ballistic missile developments, while Iranian leaders criticized Western pressure tactics. Taken together, today's developments span from New York and New Jersey to Texas, Washington, South Asia, East Africa, and the Middle East, reflecting a rapidly evolving national and global landscape. Stay informed, and we'll continue tracking these stories as they develop.